Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Empowerment Platform. I'm your host, Tyra Shivers, and my goal is always to empower you to reach your goals. Happy Father's Day to all the amazing fathers out there. I want to go into and just discuss a little bit tonight or this evening what it means to me to be a father, and then some of the men that have impacted my life that has been a father role or that I looked to or looked at as a father figure. So let's get started on that and let's just kind of dive into it. For me, being a father is an absolute blessing. I thank God for giving me the opportunity, for putting that in my destiny, my plans or his plans for me. And I just thank him for trusting me with that responsibility because our children are a gift from him and for his overall plan in our lives. So I just thank God for giving me an opportunity for being a father. It is one of the great joys of my life, something that I enjoy being and doing, all the things that we're able to do together. We're able to learn from each other and just to begin to build that legacy for my children and then their children and down into the generations. So I take being a father very seriously. I always want to be an example, a leader for them. And I just want them to know that I love them and that everything that I do it to the best of my abilities for them. So that is kind of my journey, my thought process, and how I look at fatherhood every day. Now, where did I get my ideas, my principles, my thoughts of what a father should be? I did not have the close relationship with my father growing up. When I was younger, he was either working or he was out, but I didn't really get that relationship. And then when I was in the fifth grade and he went to prison. And he did not get out until I was a senior in high school, getting ready to graduate. And from there, you know, he kind of went on his way to start to rebuild his life and do his thing. And I kind of went on. I was an adult to do my thing and live my life. And after a few years, I went into the military. So I decided that, hey, I really want to totally reconnect with my father. I always wanted that relationship my whole life. I, I don't know a person who can tell you honestly that when they don't have their father in their life, they don't want that relationship. Every man that I know that I have come in contact with that did not have their father still to this day longs for that relationship if they weren't able to bring it. So I knew that that's what I wanted. And I went ahead and made the decision to reconnect. And I had a list of questions I wanted to ask. And I had already resolved in myself that no matter what he says, I'm going to forgive. I'm not going to keep bringing it up. And we're going to move forward. And we did that. We had our conversation. And then we were able to move forward and start to build a relationship. And we created all these plans. And there were things that we wanted to do together just to reconnect and to build a future. But he ended up having cancer and then he passed away just a couple of years after we really reconnected. And when I think about that, and when it happened, I was like, I waited my whole life for this and I only got to enjoy this little bit of time. I went through the it's not fair and, all those different things that you go through in life when you don't think things line up to the way you want them. But at the end of the day, it is his will, his plan, his decision. So I accept that. But what did I take or what did I learn from the little time that I feel like I had? Because honestly, those couple of years, I was not able to get everything that I wanted. I was not able to learn all the things that I wanted to learn. But what did I get from my father? What did I learn from him? Hard work and a dedication. My dad would help anybody that he could as much as he could. And that means employing people to come work for him, um, doing things for the family, doing things for friends, whatever he could do to help somebody, he could do. He would do it. So I learned that about him, and I also learned that he had always been a hard worker. He had always been someone who was going to do the job, not rely on anybody else, and not have any excuses. It's just he's going to say what he's going to say. He's going to do what he's going to do. And then that's the kind of man he was. He kind of stood by just what he said. Now, he may not have said everything you wanted to hear, but it was the way he was. So from him, I just learned that, hey, don't ask, don't beg, do the work, get the job done, take responsibility in your own hands. And honestly, as I sit here today, I think about, man, I didn't get to learn his favorite color, his favorite foods, and I just didn't get to know those things about him. But I can ask my stepmom, I can ask my brothers, my sisters, they grew up with him, they were with him. I can ask them those questions, but there's some things that you want to hear from that person's mouth. And I just want to say that we got, I got closure, and I believe he did too before he passed away. So our relationship ended on a high note. I feel like there's a lot that could have been done, a lot for us to do. I wanted him to see my kids grow up, but that wasn't in God's plan. The next person I want to talk about is my my great grandfather, not my great, Joseph Dean. We called him Papa Joe. From when I was a little boy, I spent a lot of time around my granddaddy's house. And from a little boy going to school, I remember him saying all the time, learn all you can. Education is a key. Education is the key. Education is what's going to move you forward. And what I learned from him growing up was hard work and a love for family. He always loved the family. He always did things for the family. Even I remember growing up in the church and his prayers. He prayed for his children and his children's children. And that was on his forefront of his mind. And he always worked. I mean, Granddaddy would tell story after story about this job and that job and how he would haul wood from one place to another place. And he talked about his days in the army. And I really learned from him that while you may have multiple things you do in life, one, always be dedicated to God and serve his will and purpose. And then two, take care of your family. And then I took from him the need and the want for education. Education is the key. Education was something that he wasn't privileged to growing up in the early 20s, 30s, and 40s. He was born in 1919. So as a young man, he would not have had all the freedoms that we have today. And even some of the things we're still fighting for today. And I think about him a lot. I think about all the stories that he told us of his trials, of how he would chop cotton at 10 years old for a dime a week. Those things, while as children, we just listened and we really didn't understand what it really meant. But as an adult, you understand that, hey, our forefathers paved the way for us through hard work. I never heard them complain. And that's not to say they didn't. I'm sure that everybody complains at certain times, but I never heard him complain. I never heard him say that he didn't want to do something or he didn't enjoy doing something. Whatever he did it to his fullest ability. And even as he got older, he would still do things and try to work. And I remember one time we were trying to fix a car, me and my cousins, and Granddaddy said, go get me this size wrench. And we were like, he didn't even look at and we kind of laughed and were like, Granddaddy don't know because he was already older. But he was right. And my uncle, my great uncle, which would be his son, told us, Daddy has forgotten more than y'all have learned. And I took that and I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, Granddaddy did know a lot. I mean, the stories he told, what he'd been through, that wisdom, that knowledge they passed down to us. And I I miss him dearly for that. I grew up with him. I mean, he lived to be in his 90s. So I spent a lot of time with him and just learning and getting an understanding why they pushed us so hard to get an education, to learn, so we can have a better life. A lot of times we kind of shy and push away our elders when they're trying to push us in a certain direction. But when we go back and when we think about these things, it really made sense. They really didn't want us repeating or having to go through such difficult times. Another man that has impacted me in my life, and he has passed away as well and moved on, is Donald Evans. Donald was married into our family, married my cousin, and Donald was the first man, because my father was in prison growing up. He was the first man to take me to get a haircut and teach me how to ask for the haircut. Before then, my mom would take me growing up as a little boy. She would tell the barber what kind of haircut to give me. It would get done, and we moved on. So when I started being around them more, and Donald started to take that kind of father role, he actually was that person who took me to get that haircut, told me how to ask for it, told me how to ask for a lineup. I remember exactly what an old barbershop was in Montgomery, Alabama. And I remember that time. It was, I spent a lot of time with them. So he also worked. He also had that, this is how you be a man, because I didn't have that. I didn't have that. Even though I was with my great grandfather, it still wasn't that close connection, because he's like two removed from me. He is, his kids are older, my grandma and then my mom. So he was removed. He didn't teach me those things. We didn't do those. This is haircut time. And Donald was the man who showed me that. He was also the one who took me and where I really fell in love with marching band. And Tuskegee is where I went to university. But he was the one that me, him, and my cousin Cherie, we were always at the games. We went to every Turkey Day Classic from when I was probably middle school through high school, which Turkey Day Classic is a game that Alabama State and Tuskegee play on Thanksgiving, for those of you who don't know, every year. So from my middle school through high school, I went to the parade, to the game with them. And that's why I really fell in love with marching band. So I ended up marching in Tuskegee's band. And it was with them that I got that love. And with him, I got that taste of, okay, you're growing into a young man. There are things that you do as a young man. And I really appreciate him for that. I really think about a lot of the times we spent together. They were great times. And he was not that much older than me, but he was in a role that I needed and that I wanted. And as we fast forward, there are many men and many cousins and many people that played different parts in my life, but then there are just those that I remember more. My cousin Sherman, he is only 4 years older than me, and happy Father's Day to him as well. But he pretty much raised me as a younger cousin. I did everything with them, went everywhere with them, him and his brother Tony. And I lived with them when I got out of high school and out of college. I stayed with them. We worked together. We worked jobs together. I would say Sherman taught me how to, and I'm not the best handyman in the world, but the things I do know, Sherman taught me. Taught me how to paint, taught me how to wash a car the right way. And it's just those things that I wanted from my dad, but I didn't have that opportunity. And I was blessed and fortunate to have other people kind of fill those gaps, fill those roles. So I thank Sherman for that. And I had my cousin Brian when I went to Tuskegee, he was there. He took me under his wing there. He took care of me, let me wash laundry in his apartment. And, you know, when you're in college and you're in the dorms and it's 6 washers and 6 dryers and it's over 300 or 400 people, hey, you come in there and sometimes your stuff is sitting on the floor or on the top of the washing machine if they were respectful enough to put it there. And Brian took care of me there. He ushered me in. We had lots of fun growing up as well. And he really gave me some of those lessons as, okay, you're in college now, you're an adult. This is how things change. These are the things that you're responsible for. This is what you should be doing. So I appreciate Brian for that. And then as I got older and got married, started to have my own family, the men that came into my life at this stage, I would say that really had a lot of impact on me was, and they were all in the same church, Pastor Eddie Sweeney, Pastor Robert Burrell, Pastor Bob Cherry. And we started to go to this church, and these men were here. And when I looked at men who not only took care of their families, took loved their wives, and lived the upright life of what a man should, I would say these three men really, really embodied that. They are who I looked at. And a lot of times, I guess because I always say that I have a older soul or older spirit. And I think it's because I was always with my great grandfather and being around him. I'm just kind of older nature. So while these men look at me as they know I'm younger than them, much younger, but they were more like my peers. But honestly, I was looking at them for that father relationship. I don't know if they know that, but that's kind of what I was pulling from that. I was still looking for that guidance as a young man with a family. So I looked to them. Um, all three of those men are the embodiment of servant. These are pastors, these are leaders in the church, but I have never seen pastors work the way they work for the church. They're not waiting on anybody, they're not calling anybody, they're not telling other people and directing, hey, you do this, this needs to be done. Pastor Sweeney, Pastor Cherry, and Pastor Cherry's passed on as well. But Pastor Sweeney, Pastor Cherry, Pastor Burrow, they were always working, always doing, always serving. So they showed the example of what a servant leader truly is. Always talked about the positivity. And when you're thinking about life and mindset and growth, you want to be around people who are going to give you that positive influence, whether it's you're a father figure or just friends or just, but you want to be around people who are going to give you that positive role, that positive image, not someone that, hey, if I have issues in my marriage or issues with trying to raise my kids, I go to somebody and they say, oh, you don't need to worry about that. Or, oh, they just tripping, or, that negative feedback. These men were always giving that positive, that reinforcing that, hey, if you're having these issues, try this or try that. What can you do to change? How can you grow? Are you being a good example? It was always that. It was never, you don't take any of the blame and blame somebody else. You always looked at yourself first and then you tried to grow. So I think those three men, I still have the relationships with them and call and text. I talked to Pastor Burrell yesterday. I just called him to check in on him, see how he was doing. He was traveling back from visiting his father. He said, I believe, I don't want to mess that up, but I think that's what he said. And before we got off the phone, he prayed for me. And that's the kind of relationship, guidance, people that you want to be around that are always not only good to hang around, fun to be around, because they are fun to be around, but they also build you up. They make sure that when this is over, I'm going to leave you with something to build you up, to encourage you, to strengthen you. And so I those three men are just another set of good men. And then my mentor, my very first mentor, Kenneth Gills, he was really big into real estate, well known here in Maryland. He has passed away and moved on as well. He was my first actual business mentor. And not only, it's always been for me, and I still to this day, when I start a relationship with someone, I still, I guess I long for that fatherhood role. And not only was he an excellent mentor in business and life, a great friend, he also played some of those father type roles, and he poured out some of that knowledge and that wisdom to me. This is how you do this. He taught me how to scale business. He taught me how to really navigate the business world and the real estate world. He helped me move quickly and to grow quickly because that's what he did. And he was much more than just a mentor. He was a friend. We were able to start to build a genuine, other than business relationship. And I wouldn't be the business person I am today without him. And I just want to thank him for that, and just to really mention how his knowledge and wisdom helped me grow into the person I am today. Even with the podcast and the other things, it was him. It was him who I saw the first example of, okay, this is a man in front of a stage. This is how he handles a crowd. This is how he is all about integrity, all about good character, all about doing the right thing, all about doing what you say you will do or don't say it. And my dad was like that. It was, if I say it, I'm gonna do it. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to say it, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to. I'm just going to tell you no, basically. And he had that same characteristic, very cheerful, full of life. And I kind of look at him and saw that and wanted to be like that. And a few years, my son started karate about 6 years ago. And my wife actually found a studio, and we went there. And at that time, it was Maryland's, it was awesome martial arts. And now is Maryland's best school of karate. But Gerald Awesome Dawson, who has passed on, he and his son Cameron were the head teachers. And at first it was, we're taking our kids to karate. My son at that point, it was just him. We're taking him to karate, and we're kind of just sitting in as parents. But over the years, I started to build a relationship with Gerald. And again, another man who, one, what I really loved about him, he had his son with him, and he was training his son to become that next great legend, that next great teacher, that next businessman, he was grooming him, and I was watching it because at that time Cameron was a young boy, and he was growing, and his dad was there, and I was like, man, I used to wish that I had that relationship. I said, man, that's the kind of relationship that I wanted. But I told them, I think a couple of years back before he passed away, I did tell them that, hey, always love each other and do what you can together and grow together, because you never know when that time is going to come and you have to want to be without the other. So Gerald was the epitome of a strong man, businessman, great character, love for kids, and love for his craft. When you went to his martial arts, when you saw him in class, he put everything out there. He gave it his all. He did, and he embodied the tenets of Taekwondo. He lived and breathed it. And that example that I saw, I'm like, man, you dedicate your life to a craft and you stick with it. So many of us, and me included, we start things, we quit. We start things, we quit. We get into something, we're halfway in, we're halfway out. We're never really fully dedicated. Or we go to jobs that we don't love, or we live lives that we don't love. But he dedicated himself to a craft and then passed that down to his son. Now his son, since Gerald has passed away, his son runs the school. Very young man, but you can see all the attributes of his father in him. He was, as they say, raised right, groomed right. he became a man probably earlier than what he wanted. He's an adult, but when you become that mature man to take over something, it kind of probably came a little bit early, a little bit sooner. But he had been prepared, well prepared to take it over. He's just doing a phenomenal job there. But I remember the conversations I would have with Gerald outside of school. I never became a student. No matter how many times they asked or said, "Hey, come on in, be with us," I never became a student. But we had that friendship that, hey, he asked me these questions about business, or I pitched these ideas, and we talked about a lot of things together just outside of the karate school. And I really, really, what I took from that relationship was be dedicated to your craft. Be be all in something. Train yourself. Follow through. Be an example. All these men that I have talked about, touched on, had character, high moral standards. And I'm not saying they're all perfect and they didn't make mistakes. We all do. But if they showed anything, it was to have character and to follow through. Not one man that I have mentioned didn't work, or, they didn't sit around, or they just did not do anything. Even my great grandfather, who was many years retired when I was growing up, always was doing something, working. If he was sitting, he was resting. But if it was even just to go check the mail, he was busy. I don't remember him starting to slow down really until he got into his mid 80s. And that's when we would drive from, and I lived in a small town, and granddaddy would want to drive to this grocery store, which is about 15 minutes away, called IGA. And I said, well, granddad, I can drive. I had got my driver's license. I was about 16. He's like, no, I got it. I'm like, okay, you 80 something, but we'll roll. But he was driving 10 miles per hour all the way there. And for a while, I was like, man, we're moving so slow. Or we would come to a light, and it's just the flashing lights because town's so small, we don't have no red light. He would sit there, and I would look and nothing's coming. I would say, granddaddy, you got it. He was like, I got more time than money. So meaning he wasn't going to rush out there and get in a wreck or hit somebody or anything like that. And I think back to those days of how he was never in a hurry. And he was older, so he wasn't in a hurry. I could have been in a hurry. But then we talked. Those truck rides, slow truck rides to pick up just a 6-pack of soda. We would talk and he would tell his stories, and he repeated the same stories, but they were reinforcing. Now I understand why. Not only was he telling his life and passing it down like they used to do in the old days, pass down that story from generation to generation. You repeat it over and over and over. That way you don't forget the details. But he was instilling something in me. He was instilling things and ideas and principles. And I don't know if he really thought about, I'm sure that he had to. I just can't put it past him that he knew what he was doing. He knew he was giving me the information. And each one of those men passed down information. They instilled information. They gave, encouraged, built up. I just never had a negative thing about any of them that I can think about. And that doesn't say that all conversations were happy conversations. It just says that, hey, they said something in a way and we had a conversation about it. And we may didn't like it, but we respected each other for it. And I was always in the younger position anyway. Sherman and Brian, they would be my closest in age just by 4 years apart. But everybody else was 10 plus years older than me. Or if you're in the pastor, they were 20, 25 years older than me. And we just had a great, great relationship. And I think about them often. I think about them daily. And Father's Day, we celebrate men, we celebrate fathers, but we should be doing this on a regular basis. And I see this in many of the groups I've started to join, where men are building up men, men are encouraging men are coming together, joining different circles so we can grow. And that's what I've been seeking all these years. I've been seeking relationship, and I've been seeking wisdom and knowledge, and I've been seeking positivity, right examples. If I don't know how to do something as a husband, as a father, do I have the right men around me to teach me that? And I can say this for sure. This is really about the men who have had a Father's Day impact or father's impact on this Father's Day. But Stefanza Allen, not a father, we're around the same age. He is one of those positive people, men that has always impacted me as well. He has always been that person that he's not married, but he's a friend of mine that I can go to and he's going to give it to me straight. He ain't telling me what I want to hear as a homeboy. So if you're listening and you're not a father or a husband, you still are valuable as a man. And I think as fathers, we're men first, then we become fathers. We can only give 100% if we're 100%. We can only give that positive influence, show that character if we have it. So this is a push out to all the men out there, if you're not married or if you're not a father, start to self-improve now. Start to become a whole you now. So when you're married and when you have children, you're not figuring out who you are. You're not wondering, okay, how do I do all of this? Get into right relationships with other men now. Surround yourself with like-minded men that are looking to grow. Because I can surround myself, if I had a street mindset and I wanted to be in the streets, I can surround myself with those type of mentality people, and then we just all negative together. But grow, move forward, find people that demonstrate character, integrity, courtesy, righteousness, a growth mindset, hard work, dedication. Be sold out to something. Find those people who are in that same mindset, in that same character style, that are looking to grow, and just grow with them. You could do it as simple as joining Facebook groups with a couple of the people, or group texts or group chats or whatever. But I want you to take away from this conversation, take away those things, those small details that I mentioned in each of these men. And that's not to say that these are the only men that have impacted my life, because they're not. It's just so many to name everybody. I'll be here all night and probably a few more days. But these are some of the people that had a direct influence on who I am today. They are the ones who have helped me grow, taught me lessons, poured into me. And I've always tried to be of value to them. And I'm not sure if they were able to receive as much as they've given to me. But these are the men that I think about. And I'm not talking about I think about them on just Father's Day. I think about those people that I mentioned by name. I think about them regularly. I think about the lessons. I think about when I'm going through an issue, how would this person react to that issue? Because they're all different too. So I know that we have different responses for different situations. And I just kind of think about that. I think about the ones who have passed on. All of them were young. Not one of those people that have passed on. Only one was over 50s, over the mid 50s, and that was Pastor Cherry. He was a little bit older than everybody else. But all the other men were in their 40s and 50s. My dad was 49 when he passed. So I'm not talking about men that also lived just long lives, but I'm talking about people that made an impact while they were here, that did things while they were here. And my great grandfather, he lived a long life. He died, he was not in his 90s. But The others, they made great impact with the time they had. And I think about that often. I think about when Martin Luther King said that he would love to live a long life, that longevity has its place. But he wasn't worried about it anymore. He ain't worried about that now. He had a mission. He was making an impact. Sometimes we are concerned with length or amount of time, but we're not concerned with what's actually happening in that time. What characteristics or what are we giving in that time? What are we going to be remembered for? What is our legacy going to be? I think that for Cameron Dawson and Maryland's Best School of Karate, the legacy that his father left, everybody knows him in the karate world and outside. That legacy is cemented in the instruction they give, how great the school performs, the tournaments they go to and the kids win. When you go to a martial arts tournament and everybody that's winning is from the same school, they're doing something right. That's not bragging. That something is going right when that happens. In this whole COVID season, the things that we go through, as a young man, Cameron has ushered that school past and through, making the right choices, keeping the parents involved. And it's really, I send them messages here and there saying, man, you are really doing a phenomenal job, a great job walking us through this thing, carrying us through on your back. And when I look at him, I see his father, and I'm like, that's the legacy. So I think about my legacy. I think about what are my kids and their kids gonna say. I think about when they remember me, what legacy did I leave them? If you're a father and you're listening, or a dad, I don't really like to people say, oh, what's the difference between a father and a dad? One is in the house, and I don't really try to play with the wording. But if you are not in your kids' lives for whatever reason, find a way to get into your kids' lives. And if the relationship has been tainted, or people do wrong, people make huge mistakes, but try to repair that relationship. And sometimes if you've done wrong, or maybe other things have happened, so much that can happen. If you can't repair it, just do your part and wait and pray, and prayerfully in the future, that kid will want that relationship, remember that want for that relationship, and reach out. Really try to build those relationships. I hear many people say that I made it this long without them, and both sides. I mean, I grew up with a lot of kids that didn't have their fathers in their lives, so I know the conversations. But when you think about legacy, when you think about forgiveness, when you think about closure, don't leave something open. Even if that person doesn't want a relationship with you. So if you're the father, or if you're the son and you have the father, at least try. And if then they don't want the relationship, you did your part. You tried to open the door, and then you just leave it. Some things just won't turn for the best, but God works it out. God works it out. Whether you like it or not, it gets worked out. But try. Try and remember that. And I saw a friend on Facebook, he posted, and I was thinking about the same thing. I said, I'm going to mention this on the podcast tonight. Being a father is much more than paying bills and meeting needs. Being a father is being present. Being a father is emotional connection with your kids. Paying the bills and buying them stuff isn't enough. It is not enough. What is the legacy that you're leaving an example? What happens is people grow up and they say, hey, my dad always provided. He always made sure we had what we needed, but he really wasn't there. My father never hugged me. My father never kissed me. My father never, had just that relationship. And even for me, I don't think I've seen maybe a couple, but I don't have many pictures of me with my father. And when you think about that, it's like, man, I wished I would have got another picture. I wish I would have saved a voicemail, those types of things. But you don't have to get there without getting some kind of closure. So I encourage you, no matter what has happened in the past, try to get that relationship and work it. And if you're in the house with your kids, be in the house with them. If you live with them, you're more than just paying bills. Emotionally connect. Be at the ball games. Go to the birthday parties. All the things that men don't want to do. And maybe we've changed. I know the generations have changed. I know there were things that men didn't do or men didn't say. But you raised a generation of people when they did that were not emotionally whole. And then they had to try to learn that from somewhere else. So if you're in the house with your kids, connect with them. Put them to bed. Read to them. Go to the birthday parties, whether you like them or not, because it ain't for you. It's for them. Then your legacy would be, hey, my dad was always there. He was always supportive. He was always this or always that. My dad taught me hard work. My dad taught me character. My dad taught me integrity, kindness. And for me, my dad taught me one or two things. The rest I have, pulled from different men in my life. But how beautiful is it and I believe that even with your dad, if they're giving you everything, you can still pull useful and helpful and build up things from other men. But when you have that dad there, that father as that primary source, everything else is just icing on the cake. Everything else is reinforcement. And then you're not having to seek it. When you're missing it, you start to seek it. And then you may seek it in the wrong places. Because I can take this and talk about when I'm mentoring in schools, how those kids talk about their dads not being there and not being a positive role model, and that nobody ever told them that they're proud of them and that they don't have somebody backing them up. And while I tell them good stuff in the school and that they can be this and be that, they don't have that at home. Their reality isn't the same. And that hurts. Even when I'm standing there and the kids say, all that, Mr. Shivers, sounds good, but I don't have that. That's not my reality. And for middle school and high school kids to be able to talk about their reality, this is why we need great fathers. This is why we need guiding men. Because women do a wonderful job. My mom, my grandmother, other women in my family have done a fantastic job. But there are things, and my mom might be listening in and she can attest that there are things that a woman just cannot give or teach a man. That's reality. And the bigger thing is they should never have to even be put in that position to try. No matter what my mom did, no matter what she gave, no matter how hard she worked, which I'm appreciative for every bit of it, and she knows it, she knows that she could never be my dad. And she never tried to be. I didn't have a mom who, when I was growing up, she said, well, I'm your mom and your dad. She never said a bad thing about him to me. She always taught me to respect him, to love him, to care about him, to think about him. She encouraged it, whether they were together or not, whether what he did or however their relationship ended. She never ever tried to be the mom and the dad. And we have a lot of that happens. And I get it. You're doing all the work. But the male role model is needed. And from kids, it's desired. They might not tell you all the time. They may not say it or they may not discuss it. But I know from being in several different groups with lots of different men from different backgrounds that don't really even know each other, just coming together and talking and being open and being vulnerable. Men from their 20s to their 60s that didn't have that relationship still talk about the need and the want for that relationship with their dads. And I'm thinking here, man, I talk about it a lot, but when I hear somebody that's 50 plus talk about missing it, I'm like, you are on the other side of life, but you're still talking about longing for things as a little boy. So there's a great need for the men to step up and be men, to be present. Are they all going to do it? No. But if they can, if it can be encouraged, is needed. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I do know that most of our young men that end up in prison, they all say the same thing. If they just had one positive male role model in their life, one person to support them, one person to believe in them, one person to dream with them, their path would have been different. Each one reach one, each one teach one, just one. What kind of impact can you have on one young kid's life? Your kid. And then for those people who lose their parents at early ages, who's going to step up to the plate and be that male role model, that example that they need? Our teachers do a phenomenal job. Some men reach out that are teachers and they're able to be that guide, that role model for young boys, but it's tough being their teacher and their male role model parent figure. So we have to make sure that we step up. We're about 9 minutes from the top of the hour. I want to recap some of the principles and some of the things we discussed tonight. And I just want to make sure that you really, really take to heart what Father's Day, what celebrating men is about. It's about those men who have shown dedication, character, hard work, integrity, support, servanthood, fun. Because we're not talking about all work and no play. We're talking about being around men where you can have a lot of fun. I would say the men from when I first started going to the Odenton Church of God, and that's where Pastor Sweeney, Pastor Burrell, Pastor Cherry were pastors there. The other men in there as well that had children, they were there in their children's lives, supporting them, guiding them. Those are the kind of men that you want to surround yourself with. Those are the kind of men that, I think about my other uncle, Daryl Mayers, career military man, working for his family to support, to provide, to guide, to be there. So as men, be encouraged. Know that there are other men out there that are doing the similar or same things you're doing, loving their families, taking care of their kids, supporting them, emotionally connecting. Those are the characteristics that you want to surround yourself with. I never seen previously men that, for my great uncles and all of them that were with us, they were outside men. They were hard workers. They weren't diaper changers or any of that. But what's funny is I remember my uncle Adrian. He said that when he had his daughter, and this was his first, he said that after 2 days, they were like, "Okay, it's time for y'all to go home." He was like, "What? 2 days? What am I supposed to do?" It wasn't well, I just let my baby's mother do it all. I'm not going to worry about it. He actually was afraid to take home his daughter because, okay, what am I supposed to do? And he loves his daughter. And, he just a whole different style. And I grew up with him. We grew up in the house together. And he had some father figure roles impact on my life as well, being my uncle, about 8 years older than me. But some of that guide, they say a man's role not only should be the head of the household, but to guide, provide, and protect. Out of all the men that I've mentioned, out of all the men that I know and that I associate with regularly, all of them guide, they provide, and they protect. They nurture. They're looking for or trying to figure out, okay, who can I get around that will help me grow and take me to the next level? Who can encourage me? Who can help me grow? Who can help me be a better man, a better father? And for all my friends that we're around the same age and we talk about our kids and we love on our kids and we text each other to see how we're doing, keep doing what you're doing. Too many names to call out, but you know who you are. Keep doing what you're doing. It's seen, it's encouraging, it's the right thing to do, and you're building a legacy. Sometimes men don't get, and I feel like men don't get all of the accolades that they should. But today I celebrate you. I salute you. I see you, even if it's on just on Facebook. I see you working. I see you doing. I see you provide. I see you showing that emotional side. I see you loving your kids. We have the opportunity to be great providers, great guiders, great protectors, great leaders, great fathers. And it's our responsibility and our duty to be the best that we can be. It shouldn't be any other way. When you think about what we have discussed tonight, and I want to leave you with this. Think about every man in your life that has had a positive impact. Think about them if they're still here with us, if they haven't passed on and moved on to the next life. If they're still here, text them, reach out to them. Tell them what it meant to you for them to pour into you the way they did. Celebrate them. Oftentimes we wait until somebody's passed on and then we want to celebrate. We want to give them their flowers and we want to do all those things then. Show now while you can. Show that same gratitude. Celebrate them now. Doesn't have to be grand. It can be a simple text. Hey, remember this time when you showed me this, taught me that? This is how it impacted me. This is the change it made. Because for some of us, some men poured into our lives and it turned our whole life around. And then you leave a legacy. When I think about legacy, I think about a local real estate investor and rehabber, Will Rogers, who has shared his story many a times and grew up, had a very difficult childhood, was able to come and over against all odds, become a successful real estate investor. If you know him, you know he's flipping houses. You know he's got a lot of projects. You know he's working hard. And when you ask him why he does it, for his family. He wanted something different in life. And he wanted to be able to give his kids something different than what he had. Legacy. Vision. If I had another word for Will, I would say hustler. Because he's going to get those houses. He's going to go. He's always working. But he's always present. Even when we're together, if we're together and his daughter calls, pause. He is going to talk to her, hear her, have that conversation. Emotionally connected. So think about those things. Think about those characteristics. And that's my challenge for you. As men, I got more than one challenge, so I'm sorry about that. As men, here's some challenges. Here's some things I want you to take into next week. 1, repair the relationships either with your kids or with your father if they're still here. If you can't repair it, do your part. Try to repair that relationship. And that's not saying, oh, I tried to talk to him a couple years ago and this was said, that was said, and I just forget it. No. Forgive. You don't have to forget, but forgive. Resolving yourself that, yes, these things happened. They were terrible, or they weren't so bad, or I didn't like it. But resolving yourself that no matter what, I'm going to have this conversation in a spirit of forgiveness. And I'm going to say that I would like to have a relationship with you. I'm not concerned about all the past stuff. And if you have questions, I had questions when I approached my dad. I had questions, but I had resolved that when I ask these questions, no matter what he says, I'm moving forward. So do what you need to do. Try to repair that relationship, either with your children or with your father. That's 1. 2, surround yourself, if you're not already, surround yourself with like-minded men who are righteous, authentic, honest, have integrity, that work, show hard work, that show dedication, have a sense of purpose, that are looking to grow. Surround yourself with men like that. Find them if you don't have them. Connect with them. And then begin to grow. Take your questions, your concerns, your worries, your issues to a group of righteous men and see how you can get that thing worked out. Next thing, think about your legacy. What is it as a man, as a father, that you want to leave behind? What is your legacy going to be? And you may have to write these things down. Actually, I want you to write each one of these down so you can remember to do them. You can look back on them. Take notes. What is your legacy going to be? And then finally, reach out to, think about and reach out to men who have impacted your life and tell them why. Tell them thank you and tell them why. And like I said, it could be as simple as, for me, I could say, hey, Sharman, man, when you were showing me how to paint, it helped me learn how to paint. And I really appreciate you teaching me a work ethic, showing me how to do something. Thank you. Find the men in your life that have impacted you and tell them thank you. Tell them why. And then check on them. A lot of times we have great relationships, and then over time we move to different places. We have our own families, we do our own things, and we forget to nurture those relationships. We forget to check on each other, support each other. And as a bonus, and I'll let you guys go. As a bonus, as a man, knowing and hearing what you heard today, strongly consider, if your house is in order, strongly consider becoming a mentor, a coach, a big brother, whatever you want to call it, to those young men that do not have any type of father figure or male role model in their house. If you can spare some time, it will be, you don't know the impact that you can have with just a couple of minutes of encouraging words to a young man. And if they even if they have role male figures in the house, if you see or they bring it to you, or you know that the situation isn't positive, try to inject some positivity. Now, I'm not asking you to run in somebody else's house and take it over and do all of that, but I am asking you to do a simple thing, to say, hey man, I saw your basketball game the other day, you did a great job. Or, hey, I see you struggling a little bit with your work here at school. Is there something going on? What can I do to help? You don't have to invade. You don't have to make it grand. You could keep it simple and just know how to navigate and build that trust, and just give the young man another viewpoint. I I want to say, I know I've heard it from different people. I always want to give the right credit to the right people, and I've heard this from different people dealing with situations. If I'm growing up in the hood or in the bad area, and all I see are drugs being dealt, users, drug dealers, robberies, gang affiliation, fights, murders, if that is all I see, I'm likely going to follow that path, because what else am I to do? But if I have an outlet, if I'm able to see a different path, if I'm able to have my eyes or my brain stretch, my mind to understand that there is another world, it may be difficult for me to follow that, but at least I have an opportunity. Oftentimes we blame these kids and we blame people and we blame situations and a lot of things for all the circumstances that go on, and they end up in prison or they do this and do that. But when you go back to think about that, most of them say, hey, if I just had one positive role model, I never had one. If I just had one, when you think about that, at that point, no longer do you want to blame or look at them, look at their circumstances. What else are they supposed to do? How do we get them from surviving the game to understanding that there's more to life? There's another world. We each can do that by reaching out to those young men with no positive role models. We each can mentor, and it's not a lot. I mean, if you ride through the neighborhoods and you see them hanging on the block, have a conversation. Let them know that you do this differently. And for some people, they come from that area, they come from those things, they overcame them, they can make a huge impact. But you don't have to be from the streets to go mentor somebody. You could just be honest and say, hey, I never had to deal with that. I grew up in a different situation, but I'm telling you from what I know and my knowledge and the wisdom that I have, you can have a different life. It may not be your reality now, but here are some steps to take. You can help change somebody's life. You can help impact someone. And then in your legacy, you have changed the legacy and the trajectory of somebody else. So that's it, family. I thank you for spending your time with me on Father's Day. Again, to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. I celebrate you. I salute you. I see you. If nobody else tells you, I will tell you that you're doing an awesome, awesome job. Keep up the good work. Keep pushing. Nobody says it's going to be easy. Nobody says it's going to be a cakewalk, but walk it through. Continue to have integrity, be authentic, work hard, be disciplined, serve, then lead, be dedicated, be great. Continue to really, really push yourself to the next level. I was listening to Dr. Eric Thomas's message yesterday, and he was saying that as parents, he was just talking about parents, we have to demonstrate and show and build appreciation and have our kids see us loving things. Have a love for learning so your kids will see that and then they will love learning. So, as a father, model all of the characteristics that I talked about tonight. And I can only talk about them because I saw men model them. And even when they didn't do a specific thing, like my great grandfather, he didn't have the chance to go to college and to go to school integrated and get that education. He didn't have that chance. So he told us every single day that I went to school, I walked by his house. He said, learn all you can because you're going to need it. Every single day, from when I was in elementary school to when I graduated. He said it every day. He didn't miss a day. He was on his porch while I was walking to the bus stop. Learn all you can because you're going to need it. He didn't have to go through college and say you need an education and all that. He didn't have the chance, but he knew that if we did that, the future would be so much brighter for us. And I can go on and on with his stories and the stories from these other men that I mentioned. I can go on and on. But I got to let you go. I enjoy spending this time with you. I could keep talking. And I appreciate you all. Again, thank you for joining me tonight. It's the Empowerment Platform. I pray that this episode was empowering to our fathers, to our brothers, to our cousins, to our sons, and that you will take those steps that I mentioned at the end, work towards them, and become a better man. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.